I'm Chinese, but I was born in New Jersey, actually, about 45 minutes away from New York City. So that's where I started. Where I was from in Jersey, it was like a real, like, white community, you know, like I was really one of like very few minorities, and I think that made a big difference in my sort of upbringing and sort of what kind of business and what kind of career I'm taking now. Just kind of being in that environment, and it wasn't really a problem actually, like growing up amongst like majority, you know, figures. But what happened was when I went to college in New York, that's when I was like, that's when sort of my eyes opened, like, holy shit, like, you know, there's other people like me and they're doing some dope shit. And it's like, it was like really being transported from Mars to like another planet, you know. And it was bugged out because, I mean, I went to a high school with 1,500 kids, 1,500 kids. There was 3 Asians and like 5 blacks. Everyone else was like Jewish, you know what I mean? So, and it was just like, I'll be honest, like racism was like an everyday thing. Like it was so everyday that it was like air. It was like, it wasn't even weird. Like, oh, I didn't like, getting ridiculed wasn't like a strange thing. It was like an everyday thing. So like, it wasn't until I went to New York when I was like, how come I'm not getting ridiculed every day? You know, it's like, oh, because there's like minorities here, you know what I mean? So I was like, wow. So I just spent the first 18 years of my life like living under ridicule, and now it's like reality, you know? So that was my upbringing, really. It probably started with sports, with basketball, you know? So I started playing basketball, but then I was listening to, compared to what like my friends were listening to, I was listening to some really weird shit. Kids were listening to like hip hop, right? So they were listening to like Beastie Boys and like Eric B and shit. And I was listening to that too. But I was like digging deeper into that, like, I was listening to like Johnny Gill and like BB and CC Winans and Sounds of Blackness, you know, and like Loose Ends, you know, like I was listening to that shit. And like kids were just like, what the fuck are you listening to? You know, it's like, yo, this is some ill soul shit, you know, like, and I was really like the only one listening to it. My parents worked in New York City. So every week I was in New York, and my parents were really cool. They were just like, their office was in Chinatown, and then they would just say like, you know what, just walk around New York and come back by 5 o'clock. So, you know, as a 13, 14, 15-year-old, I was walking around New York by myself, and it was really like the Canal Street like mixtape dealers that were just like, yo, get this shit, you know, like getting the mixtapes and shit. And I was like, wow, this is some dope shit. So I've been playing some shit in Jersey that kids have never heard of, you know. I was playing like, yeah, like, I remember Sounds of Blackness, like just the name of that group. Kids were like, how could you even listen to a group called Sounds of Blackness? Like, you're not black. I still don't really consider my profession as making clothes, you know. I think the fashion industry is really, really whack. And trade shows like this, you know, and like, yeah, it's just the epitome of like why these things suck, you know. But it's a business like any other thing. So it's like, if you sell cars, you know, there's guys that sit there and design the Mini Cooper all day, and then there's guys that have a used car lot and just sell their shit. So there's like the high, you know, the highbrow end, and then there's like the nastiness of it, you know. And the thing that bothers me is like this end of the business, which is like standing in the booth trying to sell your shit, you know, like it's not cool to me. But the creation of it is a lot of fun, you know. So to me, I grew up as like in communication design, graphic design. That's what I went to school for at Parsons, and you know, NYU I was in journalism. But my whole thing is always about communicating ideas, trying to share messages, share thoughts, and bring something a little bit more substantial to people. So everything that I try to create has like some sort of a meaning behind it. Whether the consumer gets it or not is not really the issue. The issue is whether I put the thought into it. If the consumer wants to dig deeper, there is something to dig deeper into. I'd say 8 out of 10 people don't want to bother digging deeper, and that's cool. They just want to rock it because it looks fly, which is fine, you know. So, but overall, it comes down to positivity, I think. I mean, that's sort of like the slogan that Staple has: positive social contagion. And it basically comes down to just, everything boils down to just doing what you feel is in your heart, and just, that's the positive way. Doing it without screwing people over, you know, without, you know, hurting other people, but just doing what you love and what you're passionate about, and just continuing to do that. So a lot of the messages that we have, at its root, it comes from that. but each year or each season we try to interpret it into a different way, you know. So like for instance, this season that we're showing, Fall '07, is all about education, and it actually focuses on this group called the Weatherman Group, which was like a group of these college kids that went to Ivy League schools like Harvard and Princeton and Yale, and they rebelled and they actually became like almost like the Black Panthers, but like a educated like a university educated version. So they were like these kids that were rich, they went to Ivy League school, but then they went out and started rioting, you know. And there was a group called the Weatherman Group in the '70s, and they would wear like their football helmets and stuff, like bicycle helmets and football helmets, and they would go out and riot, you know. But they'd be dressed like, you know, like pea coats and like leather jackets and stuff.
Very preppy, yeah.
Yeah, very preppy, but like you know, throwing Molotov cocktails and stuff, you know. So I thought it was really dope. The name of the group, the Weatherman Group, came from a Bob Dylan song that was, it said you don't need a weatherman to know which way the wind blows, which is kind of like saying, you know, you don't need to be an expert to figure out what the government is doing to you. You know, it's like it's pretty obvious, you know. So that was kind of like, that group was like our inspiration for the whole year, you know. Well, the creative, like I went to school for that, so the thing I really enjoy is when a client comes with a problem and they say, we have this problem and we need you to solve this problem. And I really enjoy, it's like a Rubik's Cube. I'm just like, oh, how do I fix this? You know what I mean? And I really love doing that. But there's obviously limitations to that too, because the brand is always going to be like, oh, that's not, you know, that's not what we were thinking. And you know, you have to, it's a compromise. So that's part of the Rubik's Cube puzzle, is like, how do you win? But how do you make everybody happy at the same time, or try to make everyone as happy as possible? And I love doing that. But the clothing line started because that I have no boss, I have no client. You know, I can do whatever I want. And quite honestly, a lot of the shit that I do just doesn't sell that well. Yeah. But I feel like it has to be done. Granted, one thing that I will say is that I find a lot of the stuff I do doesn't do well, but like 3 years later, people ask for it. You know, like 3 years later, they're like, oh, yo, I want to get that thing. Like, we did that like in 2001. Yeah, but I want it now. It's like, yeah, but you're 3 years late, you know? It's like, so like, you know, a lot of the things that we do, I don't do like trend forecasting, market research. I don't ask stores like, oh, would you buy this before I put it out? Like, I just put it out because I think it needs to be put out. Like, in the beginning, you could easily classify Staple as like a hip-hop inspired clothing line. And it started like that because that meant so much to me. You know, that hip-hop, like, it sounds corny, but like hip-hop changed my life. You know, it really, really did. Like, the lyrics, you know, like what people were saying just really changed the course of my life, you know. But then hip-hop took a weird turn. You know, it went in a weird ass direction that I couldn't relate with anymore. Probably 2000, yeah. You know, it just went in a weird direction. There's too many people now that start something with the intention of saying, I want to have a brand, I want to have a booth at Magic, I want to sell to Urban Outfitters. You know, like that's like their top 3 things when they start a brand.
I want to be a graphic designer.
Yeah, I want to
be designer. Not everybody want to be a designer.
I want to be invited to that Nike party. You know, like I'm gonna get there. You know?
I want to be on the blog, on Jeff Staple blog.
No, but you know, it's just like I just want people to know that are starting up now that the only way to succeed in this is to look within and like really believe in what you do from day one and not have any kind of intention.